So the season drops, and you notice that artifacts are a little bit different. First, starting off, that now Bungie allows you to unlock every single artifact mod that's available at any time in the season. It just takes a little while to get to that point where you have everything unlocked. So, picking and choosing isn't as nearly as difficult just because you'll get everything, but it's still a little bit worth it just so you don't have to reset constantly because you picked the wrong thing. Now, let's go over what every single tier has to offer for the season and whether or not it's worth it. Now, starting off in the first tier, we have our usual anti-champion mods. First off being anti-barrier sniper would anti-barrier scout, which I would definitely recommend, as scouts are almost a must-have when it comes to a lot of nightfalls and the higher difficulties, just so you can keep your distance. And we have overload rounds, which it goes for both auto rifles and SMGs, and since it's very limited how many overload sources we have this season outside of possible Warmind cell mods and that sort of thing, we do not have many options for overload, so this will almost be a guarantee for a need. Then we have Unstoppable Hand Cannon, which honestly, between this one and Unstoppable Pulse, it's honestly personal preference whether or not you'll want it, just because they do the same thing, it's just on different weapon archetypes. And this unfortunately doesn't work with things like Ariana's Vow because it is intrinsically piercing, and piercing takes over whatever armor mods you have. Then, on the same note of piercing, we have anti-barrier bow, which is pretty handy even outside of champion mods, just because of how effective it is against match game like shielding. So, anything is good here, honestly. Overload rounds is, according to Bungie, a little bit bugged at the moment. I haven't used them personally myself, but it's hard to discount whatever Bungie says on their Twitter is broken. Into Tier 2, it's our first of the weapon mods. Now, I will specify that any of the armor mods here that are things that we already have unlocked, they are honestly the same thing, no improvements outside of a cheaper cost to equip. Which, honestly, there's a lot of good options here, from hand cannon targeting to the melee wellmaker, all the way through the glaive dexterity. All of them are a lot cheaper than they would be, especially Rocket Scavenger. That is a 5 armor level perk that you require 5 energy just to equip. A 1 energy version of this is definitely well worth it. Now, the only other thing that's different from things that people might have already had outside of that is Psionic Forging, which increases the duration of the effects of Psycho Hack Origin trait, which is on the Throne World weapons, as well as the Suros Synergy trait found on every Suros Foundry weapon. Now, it's hard to say whether or not the extension is really necessary, but it's to be seen. Now, into the Tier 3, there's some good options here. First being a Glaive Scavenger, which honestly, I don't use the projectile myself, which is what you need the Scavenger for. So it's hard to say whether or not this is exactly necessary, as I do think the melee is infinite, theoretically, on the Glaive. I haven't fully tested that, but again, to be seen. Now, one that I will definitely recommend is Thermoshock Plating. So, you ever gone into the Nightfall and your friend tells you that you'll need a solar resistance to survive this Nightfall, but you literally have 0 solar chest plates? Well, this is one of the ways you can solve that issue. As with Thermoshock, well, it might cost double the amount that a single elemental guarding does. This counts for 2, as you get solar and arc damage resistance. So you'll get 4 armor mod resistances technically, because you'll get 2 of each in one, and you can have 2 at one time. So, definite recommend for any person going into high-end game content. Now, Auto Rifle Loader, I don't think this one is truly worth it close to the start, just because, sure, Auto Rifle Loader, 1 energy, but at the same time, Auto Rifle Loader technically is only 2 energy. So is it much of a save? Really, no. Then, Font of Might, this is an elemental well mod that boosts damage with any energy weapon that matches your subclass. This is honestly a good one for build crafting if you're going for one single element, but it's also 1/4 of the price, as Font of Might is typically a 4 power mod. Now this one's a 1 power. Now, another synergy perk that boosts the effect of Land Take, the Season of the Risen weapons trait, as well as the Hake Breach ornament trait on Hake weapons. Again, not know if it's really needed, but in the case of the Hake weapons, that is a damage buff against things like vehicles, barricades, and other things. That is a general buff, just period, so that could definitely be worth it. Now, into Tier 4, we have off the start Unstoppable Glaive, which it's hard to say whether or not this is actually good, just because of the fact that, sure, glaives are powerful in their own right, but do you need it to be unstoppable? Not really. There's 2 other options that might not either chew through ammo or, you know, be so dangerous to use. On that note, Lucent Finisher. This one is going to be a must-have for at least one person in your fire team come Nightfalls in various places, because it makes it so that defeating Lucent Hive Lightbearers or champions with your finisher spawns heavy ammo for you and your allies. And that will definitely be required because I took a peek. 2 of the new strikes that are new to Witch Queen, which I haven't played them, but I'm almost guaranteeing have Lucent Hive. Those are both in the Nightfall rotation this season. So that is going to be useful outside of just standard Nightfalls, considering that we'll likely have champions and Lucent Hive, maybe Lucent Hive champions, to be seen. But moving on, Suppression Glaive, one that's not exactly required, but it can definitely put the cherry on top to any suppression build that any of our new Hunters and Void Supers might be carrying. So I definitely recommend this for build crafting. But then we also have Overload Grenades, and like I just said, our Overload sources are a bit restricted this season outside of Divinity and Auto Rifles and SMGs, so I would definitely recommend this for anyone at the same time running more Void subclasses, as it's just free anti-champion. So why not? But then, on the same note, Inferno Whip, we have so many more unstoppable sources, including Leviathan's Breath and Devil's Ruin, 2 exotic ones, and Bastion. I just realized there's so many different sources of unstoppable this season. Why do we have so many? I don't know. Generally, I don't know if there's more unstoppables anywhere in the game this season, but they definitely have the loadout set for unstoppable champions. Then into the last tier, we have Suppression Mastery. Suppression effects are increased, at least the time. Now, very good for builds and suppression in PvE. Devouring Depths, casting your Void Super while you're critically wounded or benefiting from Devour increases damage with that super. Nova Bombs and Nobius Quiver, be aware of that. That might be gnarly for all of our raids. Then we also have Volatile Flow, volatile rounds after picking up elemental wells of the Void variety, which can be handy just because of how effective Volatile is nowadays, considering that you can throw a grenade at one enemy, it kills that one enemy, but because of the Volatile, everything near it is now dead. Then the same tier, Energy of Vampirism, gain energy from your least charge ability when you suppress a target. Wellspring, but for suppression. I might say that's good for the builds as well. And one last one, Suppressive Darkness. Remember Oppressive Darkness when using Void Grenades would weaken an enemy? Now literally just suppressing an enemy weakens them. This is going to be a must-have come the Nightfalls. Considering how easy it is to suppress, especially with Hunters this season, I would recommend that every Hunter get their hands on this one as soon as possible. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the good mods this season all go into class item. The last 2 are class items. These 2 are class items. Lucent Finisher's class item, as well as Suppressing Glaive, and all of these other overload options. So, it's hard to say how picky people will have to be just because of how many different mods go in your class item and how many different sources of Unstoppable there are this season. But outside of that, my name is Matt Scorpion. This has been the Artifact coverage, and I will see you in the next video.
Stop being concerned, no chances keep on passing us by. We're looking up.